Welcome to Keiser Voices, the story of success, brought to you by Keiser University Graduate School. Here where the academic world meets personal triumph. University Graduate School. Here where the academic reading tales of success.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Keiser Voices. And joining us yet again is Dr. Dias as we continue exploring different topics on sports and exercise science. Dr. Dias, welcome back.
Hello, Heather. Thank you for having me here. And today I have two special guests. Kris Swogger, he is the Director of Athletics for Keiser University since 2016. During this time, Keiser Seahawks have established in the top in the country with 18 national championships and then bringing overall to 22, correct, Kris? Yep, and yes, have about 800 student athletes, if I'm not correct.
Yeah,
yes,
a little over 800.
Around 800 student athletes. So we're going to talk. So we have a lot of questions about it. So thank you for taking the time. I know you're very busy, but we appreciate your help. We did in the past couple recordings with you for the undergrad students. Today will be more for graduate school students, but definitely appreciate your time. And then my friend and colleague, Tim Crowley. It's a pleasure to have him. Tim Crowley is more than 13 years as the head strength and conditioning coach of Montverde Academy, one of the best preparatory schools in the country. They have a lot of athletes that go become professional. They have amazing facility. They're here close to Orlando, where I'm located. Tim was 2 times coach of the year for the U.S. Triathlon and the U.S. cycling. He's also a specialist with an SCA. Tim has a big background with sports, athletes from youth all the way to the elite level. So it's a pleasure to have you here, Tim. So we can get started.
And I also want to point out, as we talk today about sports performance and injury prevention, our 2 guests today, they got some major bragging rights under their belts. Mr. Swogger's football team out of our flagship campus was the only Florida national champion to come home last year. So out of all the other Florida institutions, only the Keiser University Seahawks came home with the NAIA national championship. No other state school can brag about that from last year. And Mr. Crowley himself has coached athletes to national championships, world championships, Ironman championships, and has many professional players, notably in the NBA, but also in the baseball and soccer or football worlds. So I want to point that out as we have these conversations, because there is a lot that goes into getting these athletes to where they need to be. And that goes back to the training and the development that they receive from their coaches. So, Mr. Crowley, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you, but can we talk a little bit about velocity-based training and the importance in athletic development?
Yeah, velocity-based training is really kind of a new emerging kind of technology. We've been training with velocity in sports for a long time, but not the ability to measure it. So now that we have the ability to measure it with different types, accelerometers, transducers, and now the biggest breakthrough is 3D cameras. So there's nothing that's going to get in the way. It really allows us to dig into training specifically, not just with weight, but the ideas of developing power. Because at the end of the day, we need to develop power in the weight room so it can be transferred, because everything we do on the court and on the field is going to be power-based. But strength is still important, so it allows us to kind of bridge that gap, allows us to measure it and to manage it in terms of load management, and also to prepare our athletes, for games, and also decrease injuries. My biggest priority that I have is keeping our athletes healthy and keeping them on the field. I mean, we're fortunate to get very good athletes, and our job is to keep them ready so they can practice every day and play. And that's really part of the development, especially at the high school level, which is what I really enjoy, because that's where either the real development occurs or they're going to develop chronic injuries that may shorten their career. So our goal is not just be successful at the high school level, have our kids be successful at the collegiate level and the pro level for long-lasting careers.
So how do we measure velocity then when we're looking at training activities?
What we do is, again, you have different measurements. I'll talk about the 3D, we use Perch technology, which is a 3D camera and has an iPad. So the camera actually picks up the bar or if it's something like a jump or using dumbbells, it's going to pick up the head movement, and it's going to give us our velocities. That velocity can be directly linked to a percentage of your maximum weight that you're lifting. So instead of like doing a test and coming up with the percentages, this will give you real-time percentage. And the important part with that is they found that your actual maximum level that you can do on a given day, or the percentage on a given day, can vary 15% on either side. So that's a 30% window. So this allows us to target exactly what we want to do each and every workout and each and every set. And so what ends up happening there is what we've realized is that intent is the key thing. And so if we're teaching our kids that every single repetition, every single exercise, you're doing it to your maximal ability, we're going to be able to measure that and then manage that. So we can actually manage set by set because it's graphically given us on an iPad what they're doing in the moment. So we're coaching, we're educating, and we've been using it now for a year, and it's really exceeded my expectations of what we thought, because now I see it as the next major breakthrough, because in the past we've only had sets, weights, and reps, and now velocity, that becomes a whole other dimension and variable, which I think may be more important than the others in terms of athletic development.
What benefits have you seen introducing this coaching with VBT?
Decrease in injuries, because we can manage it. So it's like I use the Goldilocks analogy, making sure we're not doing too much that could affect the athlete, and not doing too little. We have over close to 700 athletes we manage. So if we have a game today, we might be scheduled to lift yesterday. So we can't just say, we're taking a day off, because we want long-term development, continued development. So it allows us to manage to get the right amount. If we overdo it and the athlete feels sore or slow on game day, we're going to lose our confidence in what we're doing. But if they feel sharp and strong, we're going to continue doing that. Also, days after the games, 1 day, 2 days, we can manage their stress level and make sure we're adjusting the workload and they're optimally, so that we're getting what we need. And in any team, if you have, like, say, a soccer game, some kids might be playing more than others. So it allows us to manage within the team as well in terms of fatigue level. So we have a workout plan, but we can easily alter that in real time with the athletes. And the other thing we do is a readiness. We can do a readiness thing, because they do a 2 jump right at the beginning of the workout. And then we can see in the iPad, it gives us a readiness score. It's either blank, which means they're normal. It gives us green, which means they're 1 standard deviation above. Orange is 1 standard deviation below, and red is 2 or more. So I kind of know what we're going to do. But as soon as they do this, we look at this immediately, and we can make real-time adjustments to the workout. So maybe we're more tired than we thought. Maybe they're less tired than we thought. It allows us to alter our plan for the day before we get into a workout and then realize afterwards, that might have been too much or too little.
Did you struggle trying to implement this method with your athletes and your coaches when you first introduced it? You said you've been doing like a year now?
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of research. I mean, I'll be honest and say, like, I was the last holdout. My staff was pushing for this for a while, and I was last holdout because we kind of have some rules in our weight room around our culture, which is we don't have any tech in the weight room. We don't allow phones. And so I was kind of struggling, like, we have iPads. How's this going to affect the way we're doing things? Is it better? Is it worse? But we also want to be open to new technologies and new things that are developing. So I was the last holdout. Once I thought that this is going to be good for us, I think we can manage this, we were all in, and we decided if we're going to go in, we're going to do this to the best of our ability and be as good as we can possibly be. But even up to, I've been doing a lot of speaking on this topic in the last couple of months, and even up to like 2 months ago, I wasn't even the best person on my staff with VBT. But I had to learn really quick, and so I did a deep dive and learned everything I can and continue every single day. We're trying to roll it out. So with our athletes and coaches, we just did a kind of a slow rollout. Like, what are we going to do this week? What are we going to do next week? And so we just made it seamless, because the athletes log in, and so we collect all their data. So it's not just doing it. So there's 2 parts: is what we're seeing and doing in real time, and then everything we're doing is being collected in the background. So then we could go later and look at athletes and teams and analyze all of our data. So that was important to me. So it doesn't really affect how we're doing things. There's nothing to break. It's kind of working in the background other than the iPad. And then we have a lot of data, and we're still just working on that daily, because to figure out how do we do it better. We can say, hey, our athletes do well, we win championships, but I want to know, are the programs we're doing as good as we can do it? How can we do it better? So it's almost an ongoing day-by-day test.
No, that makes sense, because you're trying to also train these students or high schoolers. You're training them to hopefully end up in the college world, if that's their dream, to play for somebody like Mr. Swogger and our Seahawks up at Flagship. But Mr. Swogger, you look at a lot of strength programs. Is that correct for your athletes?
Sorry, say that again.
With your athletes at Keiser, they do a lot of strength programs. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. Yeah, we have on staff, we've got 4 full-time strength coaches and then 2 graduate assistants.
And what is their focus? So I know we just talked about how the VPT is to prevent injury, but when it comes to the strength programs, what's the main focus and priority that you guys are looking at?
I think from a strength perspective, it's pretty similar to injury prevention. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to be available to participate. You know, we've got to make sure that going from the high school to collegiate level, you've got different size of athletes you're competing against. As far as the schedule and the training goes, we compete for we compete locally. We compete in the state, but we're also taking long bus trips, plane rides, going different time zones. So, I mean, there's a lot to it. The rigors of college are a little bit different than high school. So first and number one priority is injury prevention, making sure their bodies are ready, make sure they're in tune with that, making sure that they're available to play. Then I think the other big component I believe of a strength program is really, that mental aspect. They're training in different ways for some of these kids that they haven't done before. They're fighting through some barriers. They're in some cases they're doing rehabilitation off an injury. So there's also a strong mental component of it that I think relates directly to the outcome on the field.
How do you track success?
I think maximizing performance. I mean, we've been successful, but I think it's really looking at what is our ceiling and are we achieving that? So I think it's I love a lot of the stuff that was said about the velocity-based training, just because I think it sounds like a lot of that, which is you're not setting the ceiling on where you're at. You're maximizing your potential each day, and you're really trying to make sure that as you grow, you're continuing to push and strive to get better.
When it comes to your strength coaches, you said you had a few on staff. What challenges are they facing at a collegiate level?
I think most strength programs or coaches would always say they could use more space. I think it's always one thing is just facilities and space. I think at least the way I look at it is a strength coach, especially here, and I think at high levels like at Montverde, is they're their own coach. They're not babysitting kids. I mean, they are a coach, and a lot of times they may have the tougher job because, especially in college with restrictions on how many weeks you can practice, sometimes the strength coaches will have the kids in some cases longer than the actual coach will. So they're pushing those kids at different times and at different levels, and they've got to work hand in hand with the coaching staff, but then they also have to have their own personality. They have to hold the kids accountable. And honestly, a lot of times they're not doing things that are fun. I mean, sometimes workouts are 5 a.m, 6 a.m. Sometimes it's, right after a big game, so there's a lot of things that are, kids aren't walking in excited to be in the weight room sometimes or excited to get stuff done. But I think, again, that is a huge part of success is you're challenging kids to get out of their comfort zone, do things that maybe they're not necessarily comfortable with, or when they're tired or they don't want to do it. But when they start seeing the success from that and they start accomplishing their goals, then I think it allows them to see what they're capable of. And again, I think that goes hand in hand because when you look at any roster, you've got a large portion that aren't going to play in a game or aren't going to play at a high level, but you need them to develop, you need them to be successful, you need them to be bought in. And I think the strength coaches are a huge aspect of that.
Yeah, so then I think the linking between Tim and Kris, and then we also need to see the difference between their background, because let's say if they go to a school like Montverde, they teach all the lifts and then they have this proficiency, and then when Kris get a student like this, he'll be easier to manage. But now you might have a student from a different country, let's say even Brazil, the strength training conditioning, especially in the high school level, it's very low level compared to here. And then you might have a lot of things to do, and then to manage that, I think, is a challenge also, right, Kris? To challenge, like, to manage students that are more advanced than students that are less advanced, and then now you have all those athletes in the same time, the same weight room. So that becomes
I think probably the biggest challenge we see is that what strength and conditioning is now is really sports science. I mean, it's really taking raw data and analyzing it. And I think a lot of kids, regardless of where they're from, they're used to getting in a weight room and honestly, they're trying to bigger, faster, stronger. That's kind of their belief. So really it's, I think, them buying in, because a lot of the things that we do here aren't necessarily going to get them bigger, faster, stronger. I mean, you're developing, strength in your tendons, you're trying to make sure there's injury prevention, and it's a long-term process. And so you're kind of retraining them what strength and conditioning is. It's not simply, going to a gym and working out. It's other stuff. It's looking at information, over time to help them out. And so that's probably the biggest challenge, is getting those kids to buy in to that. And once they do, then they see the results. But again, it's a long process. They're not going to see it immediately.
Yes. And then if Tim can compliment, because me and Tim, we've been co-leaguing for years. He's one of the sites for our internship for the Keiser students here. And the students usually love when they go there. They learn a lot. But then Tim, and then Tim, of course, can elaborate more and explain. Because sometimes, especially the youth, they have this, I want to do my maximum weight, and then they try to lift heavy, and then Tim, tell what do you do with them?
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, my job is to we hand them off to the school so they've got good skills. We talk about keeping them healthy, but also teaching them the skills. So when we're handing them off to the colleges, they're not going to have to retrain them. And that's what, we have college coaches and scouts on campus virtually every day. And a big part of our strength and conditioning, and they're always in there watching what we're doing, so they know what they're going to get. They're going to get a kid that is comfortable and proficient and not going to be a problem in the weight room. And that's a huge part to it. And a lot of it is just, a lot of it is our buy-in, and that starts on day one. And one of the ways that we've used the velocity-based training is because when we have a zone, it's really kind of interesting, because when you have a zone that you want to be in, so if they're hitting the correct zone, it's going to beep and go, you're going to get a blue signal. If you're above it, you're going to get, below it, you're going to get red. And if you're above it, you're yellow. The interesting thing is just what you guys were saying, was that a lot of the guys want to come in and they want to go too heavy, but they're below where we need them to be. So you got to lighten that up. Flip side, a lot of female athletes don't want to lift with quality weight or anything. And so they're often going to be way too fast, and you're encouraging them to use a little bit more weight and do it. And so that just comes with a lot of the education. I think one of the things that has really helped us with our female teams is that since day one, I've had a policy of every team that wants to be in the weight room will be in there. And that's been a huge advantage for our girls teams, because they often don't, if they're not provided for it, they probably won't do it. And we function where our facility is closed off. So when you're scheduled to be in there, it's not like an open gym, fitness center. It's just for team training. And so they're the only ones in there. That gives them a really safe, comfortable environment to really excel. And I think that's been a huge advantage to us, especially when they go on to college, because they're stronger, and we're just not seeing the season and career-ending injuries that we typically will see in high school sports.
And I think it's important that you both have mentioned about stress and mental health. And I know we're talking more about the actual training with the VBT and the strength and conditioning, but mental health plays a big factor on their performance and even injury prevention. Am I wrong in making that assumption?
No, you're exactly right. I mean, and it's an overarching thing. I mean, that's why when I have coaches or someone says, "Oh, we have weights today," it's kind of like, it makes me cringe a little bit, because it's so much more. I mean, we've done stuff because we've got our attention of our kids, 2 or 3 times a week throughout the entire school year. So we have a collective audience, and they trust us. So this year we enrolled a sleep training program that we do, I did with 4 teams. We do them at the kind of, 10 or 15 minutes at the end, once or twice a week, and teach them the skills. Because I start seeing, we can train as much as we can, but if kids aren't, getting the proper amount of sleep and recovery, it's undermining their training. And when I started researching this, I learned that, the biggest things with sleep were obviously physical recovery, but affected your athletics, your academics, and your mental health. And so then we were all in. So we felt it took us a few years, how are we going to incorporate this? But we've had some success doing it. And I think it's really, really helped. And now we can start to do other things that are performance based, other than, than just training, more and more and more. The idea is, how do we do it better? How do we recover better, which is going to help them in the classroom, on the field, and, in the rest of their life.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, I think, again, and we've talked about it, both of us, a lot, but I think the injury part of it is huge. I mean, you've got to be, from the mental health side, dealing with an injury at any level is difficult. And in some cases, especially if there's a surgery involved. So I think that's big. Obviously, rest is huge. I think in when you're transitioning from, high school to college and college and on, I mean, every level, it's our job, I feel like, to help kids learn new things and be prepared for the next one. So the mental health aspect, as far as just being able to compartmentalize certain situations, handle them at the right time, have some success, overcome it, have some failures, and let us help them. I mean, that's definitely a huge part of it.
And I'm glad you guys both you're looking at high schoolers, and then you're looking at college students who aren't that far out of high school, right? And they all have these aspirations. So I really like to give kudos to you guys for also paying attention to the mental health. I know, again, we're not talking mental health, but we're seeing more and more the importance that it plays in roles of athletes. So how
Heather,
do we...
one sec. Sorry, linking to that, my bad. Linking to that. So the mental health, and then sometimes the exercise can be beneficial for them as well, because let's say they had a bad game and they don't want to see anybody. Now they come with the coach, and then coach with his ability and his skill, and they manipulate the workout, make it like a little more, let's say, a flexibility or a lighter workout, and then let them, like get back and then release that stress, because also, especially when you have multiple games back to back, and then if you're not in a good season or you're losing, then it becomes a stress, and then now you go into the academics, and then you don't excel there either. So manipulating the variables in the training can also help with that to cope. So that's definitely important part, the strength and conditioning that we do as a coach to help them overall success, because you want to think like too short, but you want to think like middle to long term as well. So that's another important.
Dr. Dias, let me ask you though.
Yeah.
Obviously, Mr. Crowley is dealing with students who want to graduate high school and hopefully play for somebody like Mr. Swogger. And then Mr. Swogger's training them, for whatever that next step be, whether it be a professional team or, maybe they're going off into a different career path. But what is the challenges that the strength coaches face at a pro level? So, once we've gotten them from high school to college and now we go pro, what's the difference in the challenges that they face?
Very good. So the challenge now, and then I've been coaching pros for like 10 years. And then what happens is once they start achieving the next level, they think sometimes that they know everything. And then becomes a problem with the coach, especially if you get this pro level athlete that came from a different coaching philosophy, and then you need to change. And then sometimes they say, wait a minute, but I did this all the way to here, and then it becomes very challenging. So then what I like to do, and then was very helpful for me, it's learning. For every athlete, you learn what do they do, and then try to go little by little, changing what you think is important. So they keep progressing. Like Tim said, try to see what needs to be addressed and then improve there, not completely change. Because if you try to completely change the workout, imagine, okay, so you're trying to tell me that 15 years of my life I did wrong. Understand? So be kind of like, understand? So it's not because you have a different teaching philosophy or training philosophy that you need to completely do the opposite. So going in increments, it's good. And another challenging, very hard now, is when you need to deal with multiple coaches, So when you deal with multiple coaches, now you got to communicate. So communicate is very important, because let's say Kris Swogger had playing with his strength coach like a development phase day. And then the soccer coach or the football coach had a sprinting day that day, or something that's very demanding on the field. And then now what's going to happen? You work hard on the gym, they're sore. The next day they need to work hard on the field. And then the coach, wait, what's going on? And then now become a little argument, and the coach say, no, stop doing the strength and conditioning. And then the athlete might feel like lost. They say, what's going on? But when you have this communication, so that's why it's important for the strength coach to communicate, try to understand and address the whole program. I know it's hard, especially the greater your college, the most amount of teams you have, but that's very important, this communication process with the coaches.
No, I'll chime in. I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I think communication with the coaching staff, to me, is one of the most important things. So we're all on the same page, because as a strength coach, no matter how many teams you're dealing with, you are part of that coaching staff. And so that everybody is on the same page and communicating. And I think as a strength coach, it's important to educate the coaches on what you're doing, why you're doing it, how it fits in, and also listening to them. And how you explain stuff is interesting because a lot of head coaches don't want to feel like you're talking over their head. So you got to put it in a way that they can understand that fits together. And obviously success helps. But there's going to be roadblocks. There's going to be things along the way you're going to have to deal with. And so there's not finger pointing like, hey, we lost the game. It's your fault. Everyone's fault. So you take ownership of that. And it's really working towards the bigger goals. But communicating, working with coaches, I think is the most, it's the most important part of what I do and could easily be the most challenging because I know Kris can agree, like, working with head coaches is an experience unto itself.
Yeah. What I would say too, that the difficult part too, is you're dealing with different personalities. So it's communication, and the team will typically take on the personality of the coach. And not that it's a bad one, but it's just some are going to be more laid back and that's also sport specific too. So I think that, strength coaches, especially when they're dealing with multiple sports, let's say you've got golf, tennis, which may be more international, then you may have some domestic with football and baseball, where you've got pitchers, and then you got position players. I mean, the whole thing, you're dealing with multiple teams with multiple personalities. So it's definitely challenging. You have to get to know those individuals for sure.
Yeah, I agree with Kris. Knowing the individual is very important. So and then I try to get to know all the coaches that I co-work throughout those years, get to know their background, their teaching philosophy, because now once I know their background, the way they think, the way they train, make it easy for me to adjust. So that's kind of like important for us as a strength coach to adjust based on the coach's philosophy. And then also the students, like Kris said, because sometimes you have a multitude, like I had the experience to train Cubans, and then the Cubans, they came from the Russian system that I used to study. And then they're like different, they're like, you tell, jump this wall, they jump, they don't ask the coach, like when a Brazilian athlete or American say, coach, why do we need to jump this? So they reason with you. So it's a different philosophy. So when you start understanding the coach mentality and the athlete mentality, you can work better and then make more like as a team, like unique.
Yeah, I also think, coaching, especially at the high school level, female athletes and male athletes addressing the teams differently. The way I address and talk to some of the boys' teams, I can't necessarily do that with the girls' teams because it may not have the same effect. So the ability to be able to adjust not only within teams, but also the age differentials. We have everything from like middle school all the way up through high school, and then also, both male and female teams. So it's all different. You have to have a wide range of skill set.
I was going to say, where does technology come into all of this? I know, Mr. Crowley, you spoke a little bit about like VBT, and that's a new technical advancement, to this industry. How are you guys using technology to achieve these goals?
Well, like here, we used to have a no technology, kind of similar, like using your phones in the weight room. We actually shifted that a year or two ago. All of our plans and stuff that we track is actually on a phone. We went away from paper workouts, and we love some stuff on a board, but we start to track it that way, which has changed. But I think kids want to see results. And at the end of the day, the more that you can track information, the more that you can show them their gains, I think they're going to buy into it more. Right. I think they're going to see the difference. We started using the body trackers for youth sports a couple years ago. Obviously not in the weight room, but on the field, where it's tracking just their effort level at certain times throughout the practices. That helped a lot. But again, anything that you can do to, I think, engage the students and show them that the results are there, that they're making changes. I think, a lot of that is going to help. The other part, and I won't, dive into this too much, but it also helps with our athletic training staff. So I think the other component that we have is our athletic trainers being looped in, from coaches to athletic trainers to strength and conditioning, where they're in tune with the injuries, injury reports. They're able to give feedback. They're having communication with strength and conditioning coaches on different things and analyzing injury trends and success. And we're all, able to make a holistic program where we're really serving student athletes the best way we can.
Yeah, I've struggled with the same thing from the technology. That's why we went with the perch system. I think it's different in high school versus collegiate athletes, and having kids with a phone. We joke and say, like, that might be the only time in their day they're not on an iPad or a phone, and they're actually communicating with other people. And we've been able to use our system also with our athletic trainers. I mean, our, establishing baselines. So if someone gets injured, we can look at, okay, where were they at when they left for certain exercises or fitness levels, and then we know where we're going to be for return to play. It also allows us to look at right versus left. So we can look at asymmetries from a rehab standpoint, return to play. And then also the athletic trainers are also looped into our system as well. So everyone has equal access. And for me, coming from an athletic training background, it's important that we have our athletic trainers, our coaches, and our strength staff all talking on a daily basis on the same page. And that makes a huge difference in terms of, one, from a preventative standpoint, but also, reacting to stuff when they happen in real time. So we know the adjustments that we need to make on a day-to-day basis with particular athletes in regards to, because we got the mental health thing. It's important that kids are still training with their team. So if you've got an injured ankle, you can still do 80% of the workout, and we know what the other things that they're doing. So they're not separated from their teammates and the culture that they're used to. So for us, that's super important that we keep them as involved as possible with the teams, even if they're not able to practice or play. At least they can train with them.
And I think,
I'm sorry.
well, I was going to say, I think that's a key point on the training in the weight room, because in a lot of respects, they're going to get more teamwork in the weight room than anything else, because everyone's participating, everyone's doing something. They're all equal. I mean, even though the whatever the variation of the workout may be a little different, but at the end of the day, everyone's participating at the same level. Whereas in a typical practice, they may not be, or they may be broken up into position groups or whatever. So I think they get to know each other, they get to work together, they get to fight through difficulties together. And for some kids, that's where they gain their confidence. So that's where they start to kind of come out of their shell. Maybe a freshman who maybe hasn't seen a lot of playing time, and they were a starter and an All-American in their high school, so now they're kind of down. Well, they get to kind of perform and show off in there, and then that kind of keeps them engaged. So I'm going to put Tim on the spot a little bit. Do you have anyone that stands out as like a success story that kind of comes to mind when I mention that? Someone that kind of either stood out or excelled, or just maybe even got into the profession because of it, that you can think of?
Well, it's interesting. It comes to mind because he's quickly becoming a household name. But the funny thing is, I've often said, like, your best athletes in the weight room are probably not your best athletes on the field, because they're just really good at that. If you can get someone who's a good athlete in their sport and is one of your top leaders and athletes in the weight room, you've got something special. And and last year I had that in Cooper Flagg, who was the projected #1 draft pick in the NBA. He's not even 18 yet, playing for Duke, and I said, he's got that X factor, because we'll have GMs and other people call us and like, what are they like in the weight room? Because that's kind of the X factor. And what we want to do is develop a culture, because what you get out of, I mean, the good thing about the weight room, on a field or court, you may not, the effort you put in may not reflect in the minutes that you're playing. But in the weight room, if you're working hard, you will get a result. It's a direct relation. It's not magic. And so we were out to teach our kids, like, look, this might be your ticket. You're an average player, but if you're really strong and really fast and really good, that might get you to the next level. And I honestly believe with really good training, we can get kids who are, kind of a D3 level player to D2, a D2 level player to a D1. If you're fortunate to have a really good D1 player, we can make them, hopefully get them to the, a professional contract. And it's not that we're doing anything great or special. I think it's just that we're doing it consistently over a period of time and just trying to do it smart. And taking a long range view. We're not worried about, like, let's get the most out of them we can, the 1 or 2 years or 4 years we have them in high school. Is projecting. And the joke is we have with our players is like, they'll know if I said, what's a long range goal? And like the second contract, not the rookie contract, the second one, the big one. And that's what we're aiming for. And they know that that's my long-term objective for them. Then we're going to get buy-in, and they're going to have a lot of trust. And when you have the trust of your athletes, not only is that going to help you now, that's going to carry over to the next group of athletes that come in the following year. You're going to get buy-in. And as soon as you get buy-in from your kids and they're all in and you're helping them, the sky's the limit.
Okay, so I have some questions. So I had a question here. So what will be for this question go for Kris? So what do you see as a change that happened in the profession, especially in the last 10 years for a strength coach? Can you talk about that, please?
I think technology, like I said, I think it's shifted from just working out and bigger, faster, stronger to really be in a focus on the injury prevention, on sport performance, on analyzing trends and because like Tim just said, sometimes your best athletes aren't necessarily putting forward, or the ones that have the best statistics can still be a lot better by maximizing what they do in the weight room. I think sometimes with sports science, you can really break it down and give them that extra edge or really push them a little bit harder. So I think definitely the technology has helped. I think there's a lot of great certifications, specialties, continuing education now can be done, not only with just travel, being able to get from point A to point B, but I think there's a lot of great resources online that we have our coaches sign up for that they maybe didn't have access to 10 or 15 years ago, that really just kind of help them be on top of the craft, but also learn some different systems or different ways and really, really hone in on what they want to do in their profession.
Very good. Yeah. And then that's why kind of like we offer this program, this master's degree in exercise and sports science, to get to the next level, to keep advancing the career, because sometimes you have a coach that has some experience, practical experience, former athlete, or being coached for a couple of years, but now, okay, what's the new technology? What's the new advancement? And then we try to enhance that in the graduate school. So that's just kind of like the goal that we have here, Keiser. And then we'll be, achieving good results. So definitely. I have a good question for Tim, then I'll lead to Kris. So what do you think it's a good frequency of resistance training sessions or strength and conditioning sessions a week for a high school athlete? How many days a week do you think?
We have them 2 to 3. If you would ask me, because of the schedule, like we manage like 30 teams, and we run our weight room from like 7:30 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday, and some hours on Saturday. If you would ask me, when I started 13 years ago and said, what if you had a team twice a week for 30 minutes? We use the term ruthlessly efficient. We cut out the junk, we get after it, but consistency is probably the key thing. Now, I don't like 30 minutes twice a week and then have to come in already warmed up, like coming off the field or off the court. But it can be done. But probably 2 to 3, depending on the time of year. If they're got a heavy game schedule, 2 is very sufficient. If we do a third day, it's probably going to be filling in the gaps and stuff. And if it's kind of an off season, 3 times a week can be good, but they're not super long. It's really about intensity, frequency, and consistency, and the advantage we have, it's not like, our kids are in the weight room, 3 or 4 weeks before the season starts. It starts most programs day 1, which is like mid-August. And we're going through all the way through the end of the school year, because if you look at a sport like basketball, it's a year-round. Most of sports now are year-round. So I say what we're doing is, we say off-season. We really don't have off-season. We're a perpetual in-season. But you can't say, well, we're going to do very little because we're playing. We still need to develop. And that's really kind of the key, is if you do too much because kids are playing a lot, you're going to get a lot of overuse injuries. If you don't do enough, kids are going to get injuries. The trick is finding that balance between, doing the right amount and the right dosage. And dosage might be the correct word there, because it's not just more is better. We're in a culture now with more stuff. More is better. And that's why we're seeing a lot of injuries. So we need to
quality work.
It is. And not being afraid to do a little bit less at times. The trick is like doing the right amount at the right time. And I think young strength coaches, it's like, if we just do more is better, more things. I always look to see is like, how little can we do and still get a good result out of it? So sometimes you look at the workout, if you look at the workouts, the way they're printed, like that doesn't look like a lot. But if we're doing intensity, and especially I think with the addition of our, VBT systems only made that better, we're getting intensity every single rep, every single day. And I think that's really made a big difference for us.
Nice. And the same question for Kris. What do you think is important, like number of sessions a week for a collegiate athlete?
About the same, 2 to 3. That's what our teams do. Yeah. So I think between practicing game, obviously that's going to vary during the season. Our baseball team, the way our conference schedule is played up, it's pretty intense once they get in, but we still try to get them in 2 to 3 times a week, just vary it from what they did in the preseason.
Mm-hmm. Very important. The reason I ask this, because now with this Instagram, YouTube, social media, whatever, the young athletes, they want to just look good. And then they go in the gym, and then they want to do every single day. They go into the gym, lifting weights. Don't take me wrong. I love that. But this is not your goal. Understand? Your goal is to help. So the strength and conditioning here comes to assist you to perform. So like in the Tim Crowley's philosophy, you gotta be healthy to be able to play, because it doesn't help you like to be strong in the gym and then you get hurt in the field. No, you gotta be able to play. And then see, Kris Swogger said the same thing. So 2 to 3 days, especially when you like during season or training towards the season, is enough, so don't need to be every single day, because this will take some time that you should develop a skill, because now comes the skill component that you're gonna sacrifice because you're so long or getting fatigued or depleted in the gym. So that's right. Creating that balance.
Well, to go back to the question you asked earlier too, something that changed. I mean, I think the other thing that's changed in the past 10 years is the way youth sports are run. There used to be defined seasons. You had off seasons. Like now with AAU and some travel stuff, it's like go, 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 go. And so kids are going 365. So their mentality is a little different, So I think, showing them that the rest matters, that the balance matters. I think all those things are different than they used to be 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. And then the question. Yeah.
Okay. I said I'd echo that, and what we're seeing now is we're getting kids that have got really good sports skills, but just may not be very good athletes. And so what we're doing is filling that gap, because for speed, resiliency, strength, power, because you could have great sports skills. If you don't have that, you're not getting to the next level. And so I think that's an important thing that we need to be able to weave in there and make them better athletes. So a lot of our goals is I would say it's like glorify. It's like PE in the sense that just doing basic stuff to make them basically good athletes.
Would you agree that you've seen a change, like from just the way youth sports have changed? I mean, do you see kids coming in different than I guess they used to?
Oh, yeah. We see a lot more overuse injuries just because they're playing the same sport. We're seeing specialization at a very young age, which can be very, athletically can be detrimental. We're seeing, kids before play like soccer or football in the fall, basketball and baseball, get well-rounded. Now you're playing one sport, and so we have to fill in a lot of those gaps that they're not getting by playing, the other sports in there.
I have a question about something you guys just talked about. Dr. Dias, you mentioned like Instagram and Facebook and all that. And I know, Mr. Crowley, you said you guys have like a no technology policy in there. But my question is the bad side of technology. Have you guys run into instances where you have, whether college or high school, they come in with some crazy ideas on strength and conditioning that they've gotten from Instagram or those Facebook videos that you have to like then train them and get them, trained properly because they see it online, they see somebody go like viral for something. Are you finding that's coming into the gym?
Yeah, daily. I mean, that's just part of the education. I mean, it's like it's just because it's on YouTube or Instagram, it's like that's not, we try to tell them, and actually I also reinforce it with my staff. I'm like, Instagram is not continuing education, and that's it's important because there's a likelihood, and it's instilling in the kids because they want constant change, and we need some consistency. And so, like, they'd like to change the workouts every day if they could. But the idea is, it just opens up that education of what they're seeing and why we're doing it. But again, you have a continually, the audience several times a week, every week, and it's continually building that trust. And they're like, hey, we trust in what you're telling us. And I think that's the key thing, because they're getting bombarded. My biggest competition isn't schools or other strength coaches, it's social media.
Yeah. Kris?
Yeah, I mean, I think the rules have never changed, which is there's no instant results, right? I mean, I think we've all seen it over time, and I think social media is one of those things that is pretty similar. Is there's stuff out there that kids will see and think, if I do this, or if I buy this platform or this whatever, I'm going to get results instantly. And that's just not the case. It takes time to do it the right way. Again, we've tried to embrace it a little bit with some of the stuff we do, just because from a communication standpoint, it's helped. But, they definitely can't use it in the weight room. Our strength and conditioning program actually has their own page on it, or their Instagram account. So we try to promote some stuff. We try to do some education things, just to kind of, again, maybe touch some people that aren't, but I definitely think getting educated from that is not a good source of it's not continuing education, like what Tim said. That's for sure.
Yeah. And we do the same thing. We've got, our Facebook page is more towards educating the parents because they're the ones that are on that. And then we have our, Instagram page, in which we're we're showing people what we actually do. I mean, because like we're trying to be transparent. Here is what we do. Doesn't matter to me whether people like it, don't like it. It's working, and we're okay with that. But the idea is, so we're not trying to stage it like this is the proper things that we're doing, good, bad, or indifferent. I think that is good to educate, certainly at that age group of the things we're trying to do well.
Dr. Dias, you had any other questions before I close it out?
Yes. So now I have my
shouldn't
thing
have offered.
up against the wall. So let's start with Kris Swogger. If I put you against the wall, you gotta answer quick, okay? If you need to choose between watching a game or going to the movies, what do you choose?
Watching a game.
Watching the game. All right. Tim, the same question.
Oh, definitely watching the game.
Watching the game. All right. Those are my people. Very good. Kris, what's your favorite sport?
Oh, wow. I love all of them.
I know. Pick one.
I'll say this. Growing up, I played basketball and football, so I'd say I would lean towards one of those two.
Okay. Team?
Soccer. I grew up playing soccer, high school and college. I still watch a lot of it on the weekends.
Wow, nice. This is good. What do you prefer, Kris? Aerobic exercise or strength training?
I'm getting older, so I'll say aerobic exercise, just because I can't do the strength training like I used to.
Team?
As a triathlete for 40 plus years, the aerobic, because I can go out there and do for 3 or 4 hours at a time, where strength workouts are a little bit shorter.
Wow, very good. Very good. Nice. And then for Heather now, what do you think is the most difficult and challenging aspect for the graduate school in the online environment, and how can we overcome this issue?
I think a lot like the conversation we've had with sports performance and injury prevention, half of it is what's in their head. Coming in, and I think I mentioned this on a previous episode with you, it's understanding what reality is, right? Instagram isn't reality. Instant results isn't reality. But what we instill, I believe, with the academic programs, with our athletic programs, is it is workable and it is doable one step at a time, and doing it the right way, expecting long-term results versus short results.
Great. Okay. And then one thing before we finish, I forgot to mention, guys, if you're thinking, why should I do master's degree in exercise science? If you look on online, there's more than 500 jobs that right now, as today, paying more than $65,000. And then the majority of those jobs require a master's degree or many years of experience. Okay, you're talking about 10 plus years of experience, or you can get a short way to get to those jobs if you have a master's degree in the field. So strength and conditioning, we're all here in this world, so we love it, right? We can say me and Tim especially more because we communicate constantly. Kris is doing amazing, so you can grow from there. So that's definitely super important. And then to finish, I would like to ask Tim first to finish with a motivational message for our students.
Wow. Don't get complacent. Once you start to see success, it's easy to kind of cruise. I think you want to have a drive, a purpose every single day, both the short term and the long term, so that you don't become stagnant, because there's always going to be someone, clipping at your heels. So you want to create that particular drive so you can hold on to that day in and day out over the long haul. That's what's going to lead to long-term success.
Wow, great. And the same one for Kris.
I would say find something you're passionate about and give it your all, and then work on instilling that passion in others. I mean, if you're doing that day to day to day, it'll work out for you. Because I think if everyone's driven in their career by money and status, and obviously you got to pay the bills. But I think if you are finding something that you love to do, you're going to do it all day, every day, all the time. People are going to see that. It's going to rub off. You're going to gravitate into situations and opportunities that you would have never thought of, just because that passion it spreads, and other people are going to want what you've got. So find something you're passionate about and go as far as you can go.
Very nice. Very nice. Heather, I'm done. I love it.
Perfect. Well, I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us today. And Mr. Crowley, Mr. Swogger, I want to wish you and your athletes the great rest of their seasons. I know some of them are getting ready to start a season. Some of them are wrapping up, some of them in the middle. So I wish all of your teams the most of success as they finish out this school year. And thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice.
And we'll have Dr. Dias back on our next episode as we continue this month talking about exercise science and taking a look at it from different angles and perspectives of what our students are learning in the classroom. So thank you all for joining and listening. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to share, like, and subscribe to the Keiser Voices podcast. And we hope to catch you next time.
Thank you for journeying with us today on Keiser Voices, the story of success. As we close this chapter, remember, every story has its next page.